Okay, why don't we get started? So welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you join us today. So we are about to start our discussion on AI in ESG due diligence best practices from Indefi and SESAMm. So today we're very excited to be joined by one of our business partners, Charlotte Salmon from Indefi.
Hi, very nice to be with you. So thank you very much for taking me on board on this webinar, Jorge and Alejandro.
Of course, thank you, Charlotte. So I'll give a quick background on Charlotte. So Charlotte is a principal in Indefi, specializing in sustainable finance. She integrates ESG factors into investment strategies for institutional investors and asset managers. Charlotte provides strategic advice to help clients align with global ESG standards, and her work focuses on enhancing long-term value through sustainable practices. And joining Charlotte today is SESAMm's Alejandro Plaza. Alejandro is a key account director at SESAMm, and he specializes in helping our clients through with NLP and ESG solutions, and he delivers advanced solutions to help global investment firms integrate ESG factors and ensure long-term value for the practices. So it is my pleasure to introduce Charlotte Salmon.
Okay, so as you may know or not, I'm working for Indefi, which is basically a strategy consulting firm which was founded in 2007 and which developed the sustainable practice as early as 2011. We were back then one of the first pioneering the sustainable finance industry, because we were among the first to identify sustainability as a strategic angle for investors and asset managers. We were just one back then, and now we are 25 within a company of 85 plus. And now we can say that sustainability is fully embedded into our into all our strategic decisions within all the different business units of the group, which is basically corporate strategy, which supports asset managers, asset owners into their strategic decisions on a day-to-day basis, but also the transactions for private equity deals, which is one of the key elements which interests us for today. And so we have the opportunity to address all these clients on sustainability topics as well. And this is exactly what I'm doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And Alejandro, would you mind giving a quick intro on SESAMm?
Of course. Thank you for the introduction, Jorge, and then thank you again, Charlotte, for joining us today. So a quick word about SESAMm. So we're really ESG focused and AI-powered platform. Our aim is really to help companies make informed decisions, and we do that thanks to our flagship product, Text Reveal, which is able to analyze over 25 billion documents and do that in over 100 languages to really provide investment professionals with sort of key insights on ESG controversies. We tackle different use cases. We'll talk about one in detail today, which is due diligence. And those other use cases also include sort of monitoring and then risk assessment practices.
Excellent. Thank you. So today, we're going to go through a few different topics. We're going to start with the role of ESG in the due diligence process, how AI assess, ESG risks. Then we're going to go through a case study on the food delivery apps, industry that includes Glovo, DoorDash, Grubhub, and so forth. And finally, we'll do a Q&A session. So for the Q&A session, please feel free to write down any questions or comments you may have during the presentation. You can use the Q&A function in Zoom, and we'll have a dedicated session at the end of the webinar where Charlotte and Alejandro will be happy to answer any questions. So please enjoy the session, and I'll hand it over to Charlotte.
Thanks, Jorge. So basically, when we go through a due diligence process, there are several steps that we obviously have, and one of them is basically to use tools such as SESAMm, for example, because it enables us to first complement what we already can see on the website of the company, on popular web mentions. So basically, it's a very extensive database which enables us to really identify the different topics which are related to the company, and it's very, very insightful for us to first have a very big overview of where the company heading in terms of ESG popularity. Then we can deep dive a bit into it and see whether there is any specific mentions regarding ESG topics, which is either positive or negative. And this is very useful because it enables us also to identify if there are possible controversies, right? And we'll see that later with Alejandro and Jorge, obviously. So basically, growing from that, we can identify the number, for example, of controversies that we identify, or that SESAMm helps us to identify, and then we can deep dive a bit, either online through the tool, but also in a discussion with the management team, and it also enables us, for example, to have very insightful conversations with them, so we can maybe leverage on it to make sure that no stone is left behind or uncovered, basically, and that if we can see it, then maybe investors can see it as well. And if we are in the process of identifying possible topics of interest for investors, then it's our responsibility basically to draw their attention on the real story behind the possible controversy or the different topics of interest, which may also be positive for the company. So it's really a matter of insights and comprehensive understanding of where the company is heading. And when we have gone through this reputation analysis, basically, then we can try to forecast based on the different elements that were drawn to our attention on a long scale basis, on what could be ahead for the company in terms of predictions. So then we can try to identify if there are any possible topics that could actually be raising our attention or the attention of investors. And this is truly useful for us, because then we can once again deep dive on our analysis and make have our clients make better better decision based on a full understanding of what's ahead of them for the company. And for example, if I'm taking a very concrete example, at the end of last year, we used SESAMm extensively for vendor due diligence that was actually completed, and the company had a number of controversies which were both due to their to the company itself, but also due to the market in which they were evolving on as their business model, actually. And so we had the opportunity, thanks to SESAMm, to basically differentiate these differences between what's due to market, where are the competitors standing in from a reputation standpoint, what is truly due to the company's behavior in terms of management, culture, missions, or whatever, or products and services. And last, it also enabled us to identify whether other competitors had already faced other types of controversies, and could that be a vulnerability topic for the company as well. So basically, could we leveraging on what's already been challenged for others, a future topic for the company as well. So that was really insightful for the investors to have this very comprehensive and broad view of the company's performance, actually. And on the overall, if I'm being very, very concrete, because as a co-head of the sustainable finance team, my job is actually to make sure that consultants are efficient in their day-to-day job. And basically, SESAMm tool is really helpful for us, because it's a one-stop tool for us that we can really leverage on, and which enables us to really maximize the efficiency at the very beginning of a project. So that's really useful for us.
That's great. Thank you so much, Charlotte. So we can jump into the case study on the delivery apps with Alejandro.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Charlotte. So here we're going to go through a typical case study at SESAMm and how do we dissect the market, and then get into the more specific company risks. So we'll see this across the slides. So starting with basically our market assessment. So regarding, we're talking about food delivery services here. And so we're looking at sort of different angles on how their web popularity has increased immensely in recent years. And that can really see by the rising number of web mentions. So we see here on the top left that basically throughout the years, so taking from 2021 to 23, the volume of mentions for food delivery services has really dramatically risen, and that has been pushed mostly by the social categories. So at SESAMm, we're able to analyze four main, or we categorize documents into four main categories. Those are news, premium news, blogs, and social. And then we see that the volume in social really increased dramatically. So there's been a lot of chatter and people discussing food delivery apps on the web. We see then when we dive deeper into only the news and blogs category, that is still representing sort of a significant amount of volume, with around per year 10,000 to 20,000 mentions of those services in news. Then we can always check as well about language distribution. So when we gather that information, where is it mainly coming from in terms of languages? And we see that most of the information, about 55%, is coming from English sources. We have a good portion as well, around 5 to 10% in French, Spanish, Japanese, and then the rest of the languages. So we see that basically we're having a wide coverage of languages, and obviously by having also 25 billion documents in our data lake, we mirror where most of the content is produced in the web, which is in English. So no surprise that we have a sort of a significant proportion of documents in English in this case. Can you switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. In terms of share of mentions, so here we took the market and we started to look at the individual players. So basically we concentrated on looking at Glovo, which is a food delivery app that is very popular in Southern Europe. And then we compare it to basically the category leaders. So we have Just Eat, Grubhub, DoorDash, and Uber Eats, which represents the most important part of the market share. And then we see that basically in terms of share of dimensions, when we go through the years, Uber Eats have grown massively in popularity. So they've basically eaten up the market. We can see that there were around 10% of dimensions in 2017 and ended up, if we look at data from sort of the beginning of 2024, they ended up at more than 80% of dimensions. So they're clearly the market leader, they're the most visible, and they're sort of the market to which other providers are compared to. And we can see that throughout the web mentions as well, and people will talk more about Uber Eats. So now if we do the same analysis and then we exclude the category leader and have a look at sort of the remaining, at the moment, sort of 10-ish% of the market, then we can see that DoorDash comes as a clear second. And then Glovo has sort of a nascent and stable popularity on the web. We can switch to the next slide. And so now that we've basically identified our market, so how popular food delivery services are, which are the category leaders, and how the company we're looking at stand for, then we can have a closer look at, in terms of sentiment, how the people discuss those companies. So they discuss it in a very positive, negative light, or a bit of a more of a neutral light. And so here we plot on the left graph the sentiment polarity, which is basically the number of positive mentions divided by the number of negative mentions. So as that ratio is a ratio that goes from 1 to -1, as that approaches 1, it means that the company has 100% of the proportion of articles are positive. If it's -1, is 100% are negative, and if it's 0, is exactly neutral. So they have as much positive information as they have negative information. And so we can see here that basically taking the information as of today, as of 2024, Grubhub has the best polarity score, so about 0.4. So above, they have slightly more positive sentiment content than negative sentiment. And then we see that Uber Eats, which is the category leader, is trending to 0, so towards having a very polarized audience and polarized view on the internet. So as much basically negative sentiment information as they have positive sentiment information. In terms of, we can look as well the sentiment ratio. So we can take, excluding the neutral, what's the delta between positive and negative sentiment. And we can see that Glovo sort of scores around 63%, and we have a median of the market that's around 60%. So in line with the average for this market, basically. We can switch to the next slide.
Maybe just Alejandro, if I may,
of course,
on the previous slide, maybe you can highlight the very big difference there is between sentiment polarity and ratio, because it's not always clear to fully understand the real difference between both, actually. That's
a very good point, actually, Charlotte. So basically on the sentiment polarity, it will really be a ratio. So we'll calculate what's the propensity of positive sentiment data versus negative sentiment data. And then that will also include neutral, because 0 will be the exact neutral score. Whereas on the sentiment ratio, we will exclude neutral and only concentrate on category or information that is clearly marked as being positive or negative. And then we'll do basically the delta between them. So here, when we're looking at only negative and positive information, we exclude neutral. We see that we have on average for the market 60% of the content that's positive. So here, in terms of the count of controversies by intensity over time, so we can see here for Glovo and Uber Eats, we basically plot over the years by intensity the number of controversies that the companies have had. So basically, 1 will be very low ESG controversy intensity, and 5 will be very high. And so here we see that, for example, for Glovo, they have had a growth in the number of 5s in terms of ESG controversy ratings. So they had about 2 or 3 in 22, and they've had about 5 or 6 in 23. So we see a growth. Whereas for Uber Eats, we see that ratio stays very constant, and they have a lower proportion of sort of 4 and 5s given their overall controversies. They have a higher count of controversies as well because they have more data, but the proportion of 4 and 5, so higher intensities, is lower than it is for Glovo. So
actually, if I may add up a few comments, Alejandro, on this slide, do you mind?
No, go for it. It's meant to be a discussion, so I'm very happy to have your view as well.
Thank you. Actually, what we could actually draw as a sustainability consultant from this slide could be the first image that you may have when having a look at Glovo and Uber Eats is, okay, so there is a warning on Glovo and there is no warning on Uber Eats because globally the number of highly intensive controversies for Glovo seems higher when you just look at both graphs. Well, actually, when you look at the left side of the graph, then you can see that the count of controversy is actually much lower for Glovo than for Uber Eats. So maybe just a bit rationalize this first impression that you may have when having a 1 second look at the graph. But at the same time, what's interesting is to see that when you compare the size of Uber Eats and Glovo, both in terms of, for example, web mentions or even the turnover or the number of employees that the company may have, then the number of highly controversial, high intensity controversies is pretty much the same between Glovo and Uber Eats, and that's what should actually draw our attention, because considering that both companies do absolutely not have the same size or importance in terms of web mentions, then this draws our attention. But in itself, it's the both graphs should not really be compared between each other. But when you rationalize them or normalize them by a common denominator, then you can then it starts being much more interesting, and then you can see that actually, yes, Glovo has a higher number of controversies or reputation risks, or that there are actually some vulnerabilities that could be that should be actually deep dived with the management when talking with the management, or when considering an investment in either one of the company, for example. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to highlight this topic.
That's a very good point, and that brings me back to the difference between relative and absolute information when analyzing data through SESAMm. And we always try to make information comparable between each other, and so use relative numbers. So here, since the difference in volume was absolutely massive between Uber Eats and Glovo, we are looking at sort of the total count of high-intensity controversies for both companies, but it's relative to their volumes. So obviously, we see that Uber Eats has about 10 times more controversies than Glovo, but we see that the proportion of high-intensity controversies, given the volume of Glovo, is still way higher than the one for Uber Eats. So that brings us back to the point you were just making, Charlotte. Yeah.
Absolutely, Alejandro. And if I may also, I used for another project at the beginning of the year, SESAMm tool for analyzing the reputation and reputation risks associated with the portfolio company, which was probably being acquired by an investor back then, and we had this type of analysis with the company compared to the market when comparing other competitors as well. And what's interesting is that they had some high intensity controversies, but that most of them were actually not such controversies as how you might think of them. So basically, we recalculated this kind of data, and we normalized them according to only the highest intensity controversies. We normalized them with the number of employees, And then we tried other denominators as well, and it left us with a very insightful conversations, both with the management team, because they were obviously aware of these controversies, but they had not identified them as such problematic. Sorry for the French if my English is not good enough. And very, very insightful conversations with the management, with the deal teams actually, and it led us to redefining the roadmap, the sustainability roadmap that we had with the management.
No, it's a super interesting practical use case of SESAMm data. So thanks for sharing that. We can go to the next slide, maybe, Jorge, and with the example of the different controversies. So here we're basically going to present a selected sample of the latest ESG controversies we find for each of the companies. So, for example, always taking here the market leader against the challenger, if we can call Glovo that way. Basically, we see that here it depends on the category. So at SESAMm, we have a way of categorizing each different controversies through the 3 pillars. So economic, governance, and social. But we then also have a whole array of sub-risks. So in the case of Uber Eats here, and when we select only the intensities of high and medium, so we'll basically have controversies that rank from 3 to 5 on the scale we saw previously. We see that Uber Eats has mostly controversies in the social realm with 4, and then a couple on the governance realm as well. Those rank from fraud to a bit of workplace and diversity problems, and then some working conditions as well, related to basically the problems they have with working conditions, with working agreements as well, that are quite popular. Then when we look at Glovo, basically it's only related to the governance category and fraud. So they've had a ton of anti-competitive practices, possible fines as well, inspection of violation of staff privacy. So it's been related to that category immensely. And then when we analyze the sentiment, it ranks, basically a couple of them are neutral. So those are basically the news outlets that try to put a bit of a neutral spin on it. And then we have some others that use a more heavy-handed appreciation of that, and that's why we rank from sort of negative, very negative, and neutral sentiment as well for those ESG risks. So that is all on my end. Thank you, Jorge.
Great. Thank you so much, both Charlotte and Alejandro, for the presentation. Now it's time for our Q&A session. So again, as I said before, please feel free to type your questions into a Q&A function, and we'll address as many as possible. At this point, I believe we have, we have a couple of questions already. So I'll go read the first one. So what specific ESG metrics does Indefi focus on when analyzing potential investment targets, and how do these metrics influence the decision-making process? So I guess this is more for you, Charlotte.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. So basically, the type of metrics that we draw or that we extract from a tool such as SESAMm, for example, would be the number of web mentions, obviously, compared for a company, for Podco, but also for its main competitors, the number of controversies and their types, and their nature, actually. So a few minutes ago, you were presenting a slide where you had this number of key controversies according to their level of intensity, according to the type of a controversy that it could be related to, either social, governance, or environmental. Even though it's not it could actually, some other controversies, ESG related, could actually fall into other types of categories. Well, then you have a broad view, at least, of the different types of controversies which may arise, actually. So how many what type, when did they start, when did they end, and actually also the perimeter in terms of geography. Maybe it's only in the zone, or for example, a country, or even a region, or a continent. And it's very important for us to be able to target this the size of the controversy, and does it apply to the whole company, does it apply to the whole market, to the whole sector, or is it really very specific, and how specific is it? Then we usually use the sentiment ratio and polarity both compared with each other. And we usually like to have them on an annual basis, so that we can actually compare the progression of this polarity, of the sentiment polarity and the ratios, and compared obviously with the benchmark of competitors, so we can basically have comprehensive view of the markets.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Cool. Let's go to the next question. So in what languages is SESAMm able to source ESG insights from the web? I guess this is for you, Alejandro.
Yeah, so we, as I was mentioned at the beginning, we support articles in over 100 languages. So then ESG insights can be really gathered from the largest possible coverage. We do translate some of those languages in English, but then we have as well direct AI models applied to 15 languages. So we will analyze content in the local language and not translate it, so then we can pick up on all the subtleties of the languages. And those 15 are English, French, German, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Japanese, and then a bunch as well of Nordic languages. So we have Swedish, Finnish, Danish, Norwegian, Dutch, Polish, Czech, and Romanian. We also plan to keep adding sort of more Asian languages now. So Q3 2024, we'll have local language analysis for Chinese, Korean, and Hindi. And then at any point in time as well, so when clients use open search, they can as well source ESG content in other languages by creating customized requests in those languages. So we will add native support for the list I've cited, but then any language can be then directly customized through our open search platform as well.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And we have another question. Can you provide more details on how SESAMM's AI tools integrate with Indefi's due diligence process, particularly when assessing ESG risks? So, as you know, but either of you could take this one. Charlotte, you want to take a stab?
Okay, so I'll start, and Alejandro, feel free to jump in whenever you want.
Sure.
So basically, it's, as I was mentioning a bit earlier, I think it's usually a tool that we use at the beginning of the due diligence process, because it enables us to have a broad understanding of the key market topics which arise on the web, actually, and other key controversies that we should be aware of, either for the company or for other competitors as well. But we can also use it a bit after, when we have started the analysis, and we want to have deeper insights on, for example, what could be, well, I was mentioning a bit earlier, the predictive analysis that we could draw from SESAMm, based on the comparison of the web mentions, for example. On the first slide of the case study, we could have a very interesting view of the evolution of the web mentions between the different players, and this can also help a consultant such as Indefi's to maybe try to draw the line for 1 year, one more year, and try to identify if possible insights or conclusions can be drawn from this type of information. And the other types of controversies that may arise for competitors may also arise for the portco or the deal that we are looking at. So basically, that's another type of information that we are also deep diving on a bit after the very first few days of the beginning of the project.
Yeah, and just to add a few comments on that as well. I think when talking about the specific case of a client similar to Indefi, when they're in the due diligence process, then speed of execution is very key. So by having sort of a very wide dynamic coverage where we're able to analyze risk-related contents within seconds, we can save time, resources. We can also then translate any documents that will be in other languages, from more than 100 languages. So that saves also sort of resource space. And then a quick word about the methodology as well we use. So we integrate a ton of large language models as well to reduce the amount of false positives. So even if we have a very wide coverage, we're able to be very precise with the searches we do. NLP algorithms help us to classify clearly in terms of sub-risks and ESG information. And then again, that sort of ties back to the speed of execution. It allows then Indefi to have very easily readable results and already sort of pre-categorized before they dive into their own analysis. And then by really providing key aspects of sentiment and volume analysis, we're able to then draw attention into the key parts of a due diligence. So I think speed of execution and really sort of being able to provide a starting framework where then we allow Indefi to be a bit more nimble and then sort of focus into the most high priority areas of the due diligence, basically.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was the last question we got. So thank you very much, Alejandro, and in particular, Charlotte, for joining us today. It was great to have you here. We really enjoyed, the session. I hope that everyone enjoyed it too. So thank you so much. If to learn more about SESAMm and Indefi, you can visit our websites, indefi.com, sesamm.com, and we also added email addresses in case you want to reach out directly to us. So thank you so much. We will be sending the recording of the webinar via email. So if you want to share that with colleagues, with friends, please feel free to do it. And yeah, thank you once again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a very good day.
Bye-bye.